Welcome back to the Usage Moment podcast. I'm Ari, your host. And as always, today's episode is brought to you by Digital Root, the intelligent usage data and monetization platform. Today, we are diving into one of the most volatile and transformative part of a SaaS business right now, monetization. Pricing is back as a strategic battleground. It's no longer set and forget, and we have entered what I call the living monetization era, where pricing and business models evolve fast and pricing becomes a real differentiator. And SaaS companies move far beyond the first generation seed, flat fees, and tier models. So today we are asking, what is going on in SaaS pricing and where is it heading in 2026? And I have the perfect guest, Rob Litterst, founder of Pricing SaaS, the leading community for pricing professionals. Rob has a front row seat to the experiments, challenges, surprises, and breakthroughs shaping the modern monetization. We will explore with Rob the biggest shifts in 2025, how AI has changed the pricing game, what the community is learning right now, the surprises and the failures. And of course, we will hear Rob's predictions for 2026. So let's jump in. Here is my usage moment with Rob. All right, Rob, welcome. Awesome. So happy to have you. Digital Root, we are partnering with Pricing SaaS community. And I have to say that I'm amazed what you guys have been building and how active the community actually is. So introduce yourself and please tell me a little bit about the Pricing SaaS and yourself and what's the story behind the idea. And there's one need from me as well to tell us also something about yourself, something that we cannot find from LinkedIn. From your CV. Just start with that.
I'm happy to. So I'll start. I think my start in pricing was in 2018. I was kind of burnt out in my sales job and looking to figure out what was next. And I came across Profitwell, this company that was doing pricing and packaging consulting for SaaS companies, and just completely fell in love with the team, with the vision, with everything that they were doing, to the point where during the interview process, I honestly at one point I think said to myself, I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't get this job. I want to work here and legitimately don't know how I'll work anywhere else. I'd just gotten so interested in pricing page teardown and solving the pricing problem and everything that Patrick, Peter, and Facundo were doing over there. So I just became a huge fan and luckily got that job and really fell in love with pricing and packaging. So I was a consultant there for 3 years. And while I was there, I started a Substack called Good, Better, Best, where I was kind of breaking down pricing and packaging strategies and trying to make them easier to understand for SaaS operators who might be working on products, might be working on product marketing, might be working in finance, but might not have pricing expertise in close proximity and could use some help there. And the newsletter built a bit of an audience, and I think it was 2 years later, I was trying to figure out how to monetize it. And I met my now partner, John, on Pricing SaaS. And he was building this algorithm that would scrape pricing pages, extract data from a before and after and compare them to see if anything changed. And then using AI to describe what actually changed. And so he was building this algorithm that was kind of creating a news feed of SaaS pricing pages. And we realized we're kind of trying to solve the same thing from different angles. We were both trying to make pricing and packaging easier for SaaS operators. I was doing it through content. He was doing it through code. And we felt like we were kind of the missing pieces for each other. John wasn't really much a marketing and sales person. I'm obviously not a product person or an engineering person. I've become more of a product person, I guess, over the last couple of years that we've been building this. And he's become more of a salesperson, obviously. But we just felt like we complemented each other really well. And honestly, I think it was a call or two that we jumped on before we decided to sign kind of an LOI and just start working together. And it's been a lot of fun because it's we are each other's accountability partners, and it's just a lot more fun to build something with somebody else than building it by yourself, in my opinion. And so that's kind of what we set out to build with Pricing SaaS. We started with a SaaS product that was very, very hard to sell because it's unless you're targeting SaaS companies that have a pricing team, it's really hard to tell who handles pricing at a given SaaS company. And the little secret is most of the time nobody does. So that's like nobody does until it bubbles up into a huge problem, and then you usually have like the founder involved. And so we got some decent traction on the SaaS product, but we were both part-time on Pricing SaaS, and it just didn't really make sense to keep pushing in that direction. So we eventually settled on, I was working at HubSpot and helping them build out HubSpot Media, which is basically this B2B media company within HubSpot's marketing team. And so I was telling John what I was doing there, and we just kind of decided to go in the direction of a media company, which is more or less what we're doing right now. We are working on a data product right now. We have a few other products kind of in the pipeline that we're working on. But so far right now, we have really just tried to become kind of like the first destination that people find when they're looking to work on pricing and packaging, and every day are seeing new signups and new interest from people who are building top companies and top products in the world of SaaS and AI. So it's been super exciting to see. I talk to operators every day about what they're working on, and it's really never been a more exciting time to work on pricing and packaging. And to answer your last question, so I guess like something that wouldn't be evident from my LinkedIn, I studied radio, television, film at University of Texas, and one of my dreams was to be a screenwriter. Like that's what I really wanted to do was be a screenwriter or be an agent or be a producer out in Hollywood. Like I really wanted to work on movies in college. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. And I moved out to LA for my second to last semester of college and did this like study abroad program, and just didn't fall in love with Los Angeles. I didn't really know if that was for me. And so like I didn't move out there and didn't pursue it, but I've kept up writing. Like I always have kind of like a screenplay project going on, including right now. So actually I have one that I like work on every night for like a half hour or so. But back before I started the newsletter, I was working on a screenplay that just was not going where I wanted it to go. And like I was working on it every morning. I would finesse it. I would edit. I was trying to like figure out new angles, and it never passed the quality bar that I was looking for it to pass. And it literally led me to just be like, I need to write something where I can actually get feedback from other people that's closer to my job. I'd been reading Ben Thompson's Stratechery newsletter and was like, I want to try to do that for pricing. And so I started Good, Better, Best, and that's really kind of what kicked off all of this stuff.
Great. I mean, of course, I've been talking to you several times, and I can sense that you are a storyteller, and you have this gene in you to tell the stories.
Thanks.
And nowadays, we all know that stories sell better than products in the end of the day. So,
totally.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm talking to the source now. I mean, you have such a good, you're on the pulse of what's going on in the SaaS. So let's take the full year now, 25, which to me is it is, and it was, because we are soon ending the year, a pivotal year in many, many ways. What are the biggest shifts that you saw in 2025 when it comes to SaaS pricing?
Yeah, so I think like if I had to bucket it into one really big category, I think it's just the impact of AI is becoming like unavoidable. And I know, we'll talk about AI quite a bit today, I'm sure. But I think what we're seeing around AI is that it's having an impact on pretty much everything. Like every SaaS company wants to have an AI story. Every SaaS company wants to build an AI product. Every SaaS company wants to think through the right commercialization strategy for that AI product. But it's just hard to do all of those things fast. So I think like a lot has changed this year in how SaaS companies are monetizing. But I also think I've been kind of surprised by how slowly some companies have moved. Like it's not like a widespread kind of gold rush where everybody's rushed in the same direction super, super fast. Everybody's kind of moving at their own pace. And I guess that's kind of to be expected, but I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that just the fundamental AI companies are really steering the product roadmap for SaaS companies. And it's creating this combination of urgency for an AI story and nerves around what that might mean for your margin. And so I think like that combination of urgency to be able to tell an AI story and uncertainty around what that means for your margins is creating a lot of anxiety in SaaS companies. And I think like we're seeing a lot of new pricing strategies that haven't always been so core to SaaS starting to emerge. And that's been really exciting.
And it's a little bit like, of course, we are talking to SaaS companies day in and day out as well. So when they are thinking about the AI monetization and changing their business models and pricing models, we are also seeing what I call liquid expectations. So once the customers, the end users are learning a new models, a new way of buying stuff, it kind of shifts across the industry. So it's this AI effect, AI monetization effect is actually touching all the industries. So no one is kind of even though you are not right now monetizing AI, it's kind of affecting all the industries. Do you agree on that one?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think like one of the biggest things we've seen is just that pricing has kind of become a day one problem. Like I think, we've both worked in pricing for a long time, and for a really long time, I think pricing has always been this thing that people push off and push off and push off as far as they possibly can until it just feels like there's too much like commercial debt and operational debt that they have to do something. And then they kind of freak out and panic and like bring in a consultant or whatever it is to update their pricing and packaging in one fell swoop. And then they get super anxious about messaging that to customers. And I think that the biggest shift that I've seen is kind of like this mentality that, you have to think about pricing earlier on because of the economic impact of AI on your product and your margins. And it's like, I've talked to like solopreneurs who are, one person teams who are thinking about credit models and stuff like that, which I think in the past, like you never would have seen because everybody just typically would have put out like a flat fee or like per user fee, tested the water, see what hits, see what doesn't, and kind of course corrected from there. But I would say AI is 100% influencing everything. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
And you were referring to what I call the first generation of SaaS, which was really, really successful model in many ways, and very convenient and comfortable, especially for the Wall Street and CFOs of the companies.
Yeah.
But that is, as we see, that is changing now, and that's obviously a big shift. What we see, but let's get back to the AI. Listening to the community, and you see the struggles, the opportunities, and all of that. What are the teams really struggling most with when it comes to AI monetization, in your own opinion?
So I think I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. I listened to this awesome podcast from Andreessen Horowitz and this guy, Gavin Baker, and he articulated it really well. It's just like this, there's kind of like this catch-22 in SaaS where like every SaaS company wants an AI story, but in order to like have a real AI story, you almost need to have margin erosion. You need to show that your margins are going down because if you still have like an 80 to 90% gross margin, the chances are like either you're charging a lot, you're like really properly monetizing AI, which I don't know if anybody's really doing that yet, because I think a lot of customers are really afraid of their bills going up really high. So I think everybody's being somewhat generous with AI right now. And so if you're not showing any margin erosion, it's really hard to believe that you actually have users using your AI product. And so like, I think a big wake up call was when Notion's CEO was in the Wall Street Journal, Ivan, and he talked about how they're now giving 10% of their margin directly to the LLMs, which I mean is a bummer on one hand, obviously, for the traditional SaaS benchmark metrics. But on another hand, it means people are actually using their AI product, which is great for Notion. So I think that's kind of like the fundamental tension is like we want to have an AI story and we need to learn how to incorporate this technology into what we're doing. But at the same time, we are still being measured, whether you're public and you're being measured against other public SaaS companies in the public markets, or if you're private and you're looking for your next funding round. It doesn't matter. I think on both sides, people are getting compared to kind of like traditional SaaS metrics. And so there's a lot of anxiety around that. And so I think people are kind of trying to figure out where they fit, if they're going to be like adoption focused, which would mean like not really raising prices, being super generous with AI and kind of like letting their margins take a hit in the short term. And I would say Figma has been doing that pretty well. Like they've been bundling a bunch of AI features and functionality into their product. And they kind of telegraphed this to analysts at their last earnings call. They said, our margins are probably going to take a hit because we're going to be really aggressive with how we roll out AI. But then on the other side of that, you get companies like Freshworks, who recently 5x'd the cost of their AI agent because they're getting a lot of usage there. And, they want to make more money off of that. So I think, and like, I don't even know if those are like two real sides of the spectrum. They're just two players who are kind of taking two different approaches. And I think that's kind of the question is like, how much do you want to focus on adoption versus monetizing AI? How comfortable are you with sacrificing margin in the short term and performance in the short term? And I do think like to a certain extent, it's a lot of the same questions that people used to ask about freemium. But at the same time, I think like AI is just a lot more capable and there's just so much that you can do. And so I think like the upside of learning from what your customers are doing with your AI product is just huge because it can ultimately power like your monetization strategy down the road, and make that a lot sharper. So I think that's kind of like the fundamental tension that we've been seeing. And I would say Notion is kind of like in between those two. Like Notion's charging for their kind of like staggering the level of access they give to Notion AI in different plans. And so they're monetizing it, kind of like different levels depending on how much access you have. And I think that's kind of like the fundamental question that a lot of these companies are asking themselves.
And maybe it's too early to ask you a question that have you seen any super successful cases, because it's so early. Everyone is just experimenting and exploring how to do it effectively and in the right manner. But all I can, it's funny that you mentioned the freemium, because people a lot smarter than myself are saying that, of course, AI is always needs to be usage-based. It needs to be consumption to some extent. Credits, tokens, all of that is usage-based. And it's one way to also lower the entry barrier for the users if they, I'm not ready to commit to this tool because next week there might be a new tool that I want to jump into that one.
Right.
So a lot of the companies are saying that this usage-based, consumption-based model is actually very friendly for the customers and users to really like experiment with the different tools, because people are not ready to commit. Nobody can say what is the leading and winning AI tool, or so that's an interesting.
I think that's 100%. I think that's 100% right. I mean, like even myself, like maybe like a month ago, I started using the ChatGPT browser. I think it's called Atlas, and I was super excited about it. But then one Monday, I pulled it up, and I had all of these things up on Friday when I kind of put my computer away for the weekend. And when I pulled it up on Monday, like all of the things that I pulled up were gone, and like none of my bookmarks were saved. And I was like, oh, I can't deal with this. Like I'm just going back to Chrome. And then of course, like 2 weeks later, the new edition of Gemini dropped and Nano Banana dropped, and like all of a sudden, like everybody was saying Google's ahead of OpenAI. And so I was like, oh yeah, like why would I have left Chrome anyway? Like it's too early to make any of those like big decisions about switching big workflows that you're with apps that you're in front of all day. So I totally agree with that. And I think to your point, like a usage-based model is is super, super helpful there.
Yeah. And there's another angle that makes me also happy, that the shift from seat-based, very stable model into the usage-based is the fact that actually it forces now companies to really focus on the product experience, the product itself, because it's you're trying to scale the usage in order to be successful, and we have millions of good examples that are making money with the usage-based model. But it's kind of it's in my mind, it's back to the good old days when the product experience actually matters, and that kind of because the first generation, which was, like I said, very successful, was focused on scaling the number of users, and
Totally.
now we are shifting to something that let's scale the usage, because that's ultimately the stickiness. Interesting. But have you seen any, looking at your community, something that is really, how would I say, standing out, or the innovations in any companies that you really look up to and say that, hey, that's very clever. You can mention
Definitely.
name or no mention names, but any pricing innovation that you feel or think that is very smart?
Yeah, I'm happy to mention names. So I think like one company that's gotten a lot of really positive press for good reason this year is Intercom and Finn, their AI agent that's outcome based. And I think what's cool about it is like one pattern that we're seeing is companies launching with an add-on first as kind of like a safe space to experiment, and then gathering learnings from launching that add-on and bundling it into their core model. And so like I can go down the list and like name a bunch of companies that have done this. I mean, we've seen this with Intercom, we've seen it with Notion, we've seen it with Loom, we've seen it with Slack did it, Asana did it. Like there's a long list of companies who have kind of like used this approach. And I think it's really, really smart. I think like I just talked to Scott Woody last week, and he validated this. This is what they're seeing at Metronome too, is this kind of like start with an add-on, then bundle it into the core model. So I think a lot of companies are doing that, and some of the things that people are doing there are really interesting. As far as like innovation, it's been really impressive to me this year. Intercom and what they've done with Finn is just amazing. I think they've really kind of like rebranded around outcome-based pricing, and they've used this as kind of like a pivotal brand moment to reinvent their company, which I think is super smart. They were kind of a sleepy player in a sleepy place, and that's no longer the case. So I think like kudos to them because they really took advantage of the moment. I think Agentforce and what Salesforce has done there has been really impressive. Just the sheer audacity to go as hard into agents as they have. And they have this, they allow people to purchase it however they want. Like you can buy a license, you can buy credits, you can buy pay as you go. They have this billing optionality that I have not seen before, at least very commonly. Like that's pretty rare. And so I think like they might be onto something there with just this kind of like buy how you want, which is really interesting. I think, I really like what HubSpot's done with their AI product Breeze. They launched it as an add-on, and I think you can start to see they're infiltrating the rest of their product with Breeze and AI, and giving different products and different plans different levels of access there, which I think is really smart. And one of the craziest things that I saw this year that I think people are very divisive on is what Figma has done with their new seat model. They introduced, instead of going like full-blown multi-product and having like all of these different products that you just buy seats to, they created different user types and basically bundled all their products into one platform. And depending on the type of user you are, you get different levels of access to their product. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure how scalable that and like how long-term, like how durable that strategy is. I do think as AI infiltrates their product, it's inevitable that they're going to have to shift to more of a consumption model. But for the short term, I think it's a really interesting and kind of novel way to differentiate features by user type.
But clearly, I mean, listening to you, it's clear that it's the pricing is kind of a pricing and monetization innovation is kind of a back now, and we see a lot more of that compared to the 10, 15 years when everyone was busy of looking exactly like everyone else. I mean, the seat-based model, and that was pretty, because of its success in the end of the day. It's natural.
Totally.
But now we see, like every marketing textbook is saying, that pricing is one of your differentiator and innovation source. So I'm glad to see that coming back now, and we will see clearly much more of a pricing innovations. Yeah. So,
Completely agree.
Yeah. So inside a community, I mean, you see a lot of requests and questions. So what were the things that your members were most interested in 25 in general? I mean, the questions, asking from you, asking from community, or searching for information, the topics.
Yeah, so I think the biggest topics that have come up time and time again this year, I would say one of them is kind of like the add-on versus new product question, like trying to figure out, should I launch an add-on? How much should I put into that add-on? How should I price and package it? How should I go to market with it? Or do I launch a new product entirely? I think that's an interesting debate. I've gotten a lot of questions about credits. People are really, really interested in credit models. I think in a lot of ways, credits really were the story of 2025. They've become kind of like this bridge to outcome-based pricing. I think a lot of people talk about outcome-based pricing. I think it is an amazing concept, and eventually it will become more of a reality. I think the harsh reality is that there's a lot more hype than substance to outcome-based pricing right now. There just are not a lot of SaaS companies who are actually pricing based on outcomes. And I think a big part of that is, first of all, kind of like the operational side of it. I think there are a lot of things that you need to get right to charge by outcomes. You need to agree with your customers on the outcome. You need a product that can actually do that. And then you need to be able to solve attribution. You need to be able to very clearly draw a straight line between, this thing getting done and your product actually doing it, which I think is really hard for a lot of products. And I also think you need the underlying technology to power it. So using something like Digital Route or using a billing engine like Metronome that can help you do this sort of stuff, right? So I think credits have come up quite a bit. I think more broadly, one question that has just been persistent since I started in pricing in 2018 is the idea of value metrics and pricing metrics. I think everybody always comes back to this and is curious, how should I charge? Basically, what should my pricing metric be? We have this shift in our industry where we can no longer charge by store, and now we need to charge by orders, or we need to charge by number of employees, or we need to move to something else. What should I do? And so I think that has been just a persistent question since I started in pricing, and I would say it's even more persistent today than it was back in the day, because I do think pricing moves more slowly than I think that the actuality of pricing moves more slowly than the narrative of people that are writing and talking about pricing. So we're talking about credits, we're talking about outcomes. I think the vast majority of SaaS companies are still kind of trying to move from pure licenses to hybrid, right? So I think we're in reality, the market is probably a few steps back from where people are talking about right now. And so we're still hearing a lot of questions around pricing metrics and how to move towards a more consumption-driven model. And honestly, those are great questions, and those are hard questions. I think we would get people at Profitwell who would come in wanting to completely change their value metric, and that could be the right decision, but it also might be the total wrong decision. I think one thing people forget is that buyers budget for whatever metric is kind of ubiquitous in your industry. So if you're going into a market that primarily charges based on seats, it can be really, really hard to rally buyers around a different way to pay unless you can show really, really clear value and a really good reason to move in that direction, and probably show them savings, at least in the beginning. So that's a topic that I think is just always going to be top of mind. even as we move towards outcomes, right? Like what outcome should I charge for? I think is going to become like the new version of that question in a few years. So yeah, that's one that I still see quite a bit.
Yeah, and what I just spoke a couple of weeks ago with one cybersecurity company that was dreaming of going for the outcome based. So how many detections they do and how many attacks they actually prevent, which is kind of an outcome. But they say that's so hard because defining the outcome is always individual. It's like the pricing model becomes so complex in the end of the day that you cannot really manage it well. That's. But I fully agree that those questions are the ones that people are now thinking very. What is my unit of value? What should I? Is it hours? Is it resolutions? Is it tasks done? What is it in the end of the day? Another 100%. Advice we kind of share with all the clients at the moment is that whatever is your model that you are choosing now, it's not going to be the last one. So you will learn, you will change it, and it keeps changing. It's evolving. So don't hard code it. That's what we're trying to say. That you need to have the flexibility in your models.
That's so well put. I mean, I think like being able to be nimble, being able to change your pricing and be iterative with your pricing is kind of like the fundamental skill that I think is like underpinning everything that we're talking about. I think it's still super rare for SaaS companies to have that ability and I think a lot of it is just because of legacy homegrown solutions or old billing solutions that create bottlenecks. I mean, I was just talking to Scott yesterday, and I think the reason that last week, Scott Woody from Metronome, and the reason he started Metronome is because I think they had 50 people at Dropbox where he was an engineering leader who were fully focused. Their entire job was just focused on like product finance and product billing, like basically like metering, rating, like all of those things. And if you look at OpenAI, like he was saying, OpenAI has 1/10 of the people, or they had 1/10 of the people at the same revenue level that Dropbox was at working on that same thing. So like if you have the right tech stack and you modernize your architecture, I think it's it's possible to do that stuff way faster. And I think to outcome-based pricing, like the interesting thing is like if you look at, I think people need to look at it on a spectrum. And so somebody like Finn, like customer success, I think is ripe for this because resolutions are kind of like at the end of the spectrum in the value chain. And there's something that is measurable in a lot of ways. But like on the sales side, so like if you're a CRM platform or like a sales enablement platform, you're not going to close a customer for your customers, right? Like that's probably not the outcome that you should be measured on. But there are tons of like incremental steps before you actually close a customer. Like first you need to create a list of prospects. Then you need to reach out to those prospects. Then there are all these things that you need to do where I think like there are ways to charge based on those outcomes. And you're starting to see it with companies like Chili Piper. I think they have an AI add-on that does a lot of this stuff for you. Day AI is a CRM that I think is going in that direction. So it's really interesting to watch kind of how that's evolving, because I do think that will be very disruptive, and especially for startups. Like if startups can use some of these other solutions that charge based on outcomes and save compared to kind of like the legacy solutions, I think it could really change kind of like the dynamics within a market of what kind of like the core platform you start with could be.
Hey Rob, you mentioned Metronome, and you guys are partnering like we as well. I mean, Metronome is a big supporter of your community and part of the community. So what are your speculative takes on the Stripe Metronome deal now? I mean, what is the story behind? What is Stripe getting and what's the Metronome? I need to ask that.
Of course. Yeah. No, I did talk to Scott last week, but we didn't really get into any like inside baseball, but I can definitely share my take. So like from what I've learned across the industry, the general consensus that I hear is that Stripe billing is a great product for simple subscriptions, but people tend to, and it's improving very quickly. Like I think like people have referred to Stripe billing as kind of like the elephant in the room in the billing space, because when Stripe billing nails usage-based pricing, consumption pricing, it's going to be very disruptive for all these other consumption billing players. So like that has been kind of like the chorus that I've heard over the last 2 years about the billing space. But the reality is, like right now, Stripe billing, I think people still feel like they're outgrowing it and they need to move on to something else once they move to a hybrid model or like reach a certain level of complexity, whatever it might be. And I think Stripe just took an honest look at what they were building, what was happening in the market, what Metronome has built. And it was just that kind of like buy or build calculus, and just realized like, we love what these guys are doing. They're working with the biggest players in AI, and like, we need to be there. Like that needs to be, where Stripe billing is going. And I think like, from what I understand from Scott, like it very much seems like, they're super excited not only to acquire the technology, but also the team, and just like how the Metronome team has gone about this and thought through it. They're very customer focused, because of how innovative a lot of the stuff that they're offering is. So I think it was just a really solid match, both technology wise and people wise. And I think it's a very big testament to how important this space is, and how this really is just the future of where this technology needs to go. Because it's obviously a big bet. I mean, Stripe's a big company. They obviously have a lot of engineers who they could have tasked with this, but they realize this thing is moving so fast, and this is a company, Metronome, who's already been ahead of the eight ball. They know what they're doing. So I think it's a really smart collaboration.
I think it was a perfect match, and like you said, they are complementing what Stripe is not having right now, and maybe it's just like doing it accelerated way to the next, which is
100%.
So Metronome is really bringing the capabilities that they were lacking.
Oh yeah, I mean the other thing is just how much green space this opens up for Metronome. I mean, being able to plug Metronome into Stripe's user base and customer base is, I mean, Stripe has so many customers. It's an unbelievable unlock for Metronome. So I think it just makes a ton of sense across the board. I had to reread the LinkedIn post though. I told Scott this last week. Like, he didn't. I feel like there's a standard formula or template for the like "we got acquired" post, and I think he broke it a little bit just in like the style of how he wrote it. I had to like reread it. I was like, "Is it April Fool's? What am I reading right now? This is crazy." But once I actually digested what the post said, I was very excited for everybody, obviously.
But the way we at Digital Root, we see the future now, because this is clearly now a massive transformation to something new, which we see happening right now. And the technologies that were built for the first generation doesn't necessarily bring what is needed now. And we launched a couple of weeks ago the Usage Cloud, which is a data platform for to power all of this. And we said in the launch event that every new era needs a new engine, and that's what we are talking about. There's a need for something new in the end.
Yeah.
Hey,
I love what you guys are doing. I love just my 2 cents. Like, I think ripping out your billing product or billing platform gets harder the bigger you get, obviously, right? And I think like the options that are on the market, like you guys are doing this, I think, in the enterprise, which is incredibly complex. Finn Glover and the team from Schematic have built kind of like an adjacent product, somewhat similar product, and he has seen a lot of success on the low end, kind of plugging into Stripe. But this idea that you have this kind of data layer or this kind of abstracted layer between product and billing, so you don't need to rip out your billing software. You can just layer this thing in, and it completely transforms your agility and flexibility with pricing, I think is genius. I think it's something that a lot more companies need to consider and need to take a long, hard look at, for sure.
And of course, our legacy is, I mean, being 25 years, and we've been together with the leaders and pioneers of the usage-based and consumption, starting from telcos and media companies that have been there. So there's nothing new to us in all of this. But now what we want to do is democratize and bring the same capabilities for all of the SaaS companies that used to be a privilege for very large global companies to really get the data to power all of these new monetization and pricing models. Because the fact is, and I say it as a important note, is that when the moment you make a decision to go into usage-based or outcome-based or whatever is the new model, you become data dependent, usage data, real-time usage data dependent. And that's what all of these pioneers have done in the past, that they really build the new infrastructure in order to, and that's what we see in Stripe Metronome as well. So this is a new infrastructure that is needed. Okay, let's look into the next year. What are your predictions and expectations? I mean, the year 25 is ending soon, and we are looking the next year. First of all, any plans for pricing SaaS? What are you guys developing right now, and what are the plans for your community?
Yeah. So we have a lot that we're thinking about at pricing SaaS. So on the content side, we want to do a lot more regular events with our partners, with operators in our community. We want to get onto a weekly cadence where there's just always something going on, where if people are interested in pricing and need somebody to pressure test their pricing, they can jump in and have a really productive and useful conversation. So I think events are a big part of it. We're also getting ready to launch our data product. So John, my partner, has been building this algorithm that I mentioned at the top of the interview. It's been a long time coming. He's been working on it for over 2 years at this point. And it's really, at this point, only been kind of like internal tooling for us. It basically, the data powers our whole media strategy. It's what sits behind our reports. It sits behind our newsletter. And so it's been this kind of self-generating content engine for us, which has been amazing. It's enabled us to build this, this media and data business where we can punch way above our weight. And people at top SaaS companies kind of know who we are, despite it only being, 1.5 people right now. So I think getting John full time and getting the data product actually in production and in the hands of real operators is kind of the next big thing that we're focused on and really excited about. So that's us. Next year, so I think, like, as far as what I see coming in 2026, I honestly think we'll see a lot of the trends from 2025 persist. Like, I think we're going to see a lot more credits. I think eventually there's going to be a reckoning on credits, because I think credits can be really annoying for the customer, especially if all of your customers or all the vendors that you're using are offering credits. I think that becomes overwhelming, and there's eventually going to be a correction on that. But I don't think we're anywhere close to it yet. I think a lot more companies are going to go the credit route in 2026. So I expect that to persist for sure. I think another company, like I think there will be a company that makes a really big bet on outcome-based pricing, and I don't know who that's going to be. But I think, I definitely think that will happen in 2026. I think Intercom was kind of the big story of 2025, but Intercom's a private company. Again, we talked about that. They're kind of, they're a bit of a sleepy product in kind of a sleepy space. I think there will be a bigger name that goes outcome based in 2026. And I think when that happens, there's probably going to be a lot of hype around outcome based pricing, and people are going to kind of call that the moment. And we'll see how fast that happens. But I think that's the other thing that I'm looking at. And I think this kind of like AI or add on first and then bundle into the core model is going to continue to move. I think what's been happening with like AI pricing and packaging, like the evolution that companies are taking is I think those trends make a lot of sense. And I think what I like about them is um, they de-risk adding AI to your product. Like whether you do credits or you do an add-on or you do an add-on that charges based on credits, like those two approaches, I think are a way to kind of protect your margins and also get your AI product in front of users, allow them to kind of control their costs. So I like what I'm seeing there, and I think that trend is just going to become more popular. Um, but yeah, I think pricing is going to continue to become a bigger focus, and hopefully more people are going to hire people to run pricing. I've heard a lot of people talk about kind of like the monetization lead product manager role as kind of like a role that you need to start hiring for a lot earlier. And so I think that's probably going to happen too. Um, so yeah, those are a few things that I could definitely see happening in 26.
Yeah, this new role is really what we see as well. We see a lot of new type of titles that are around the monetization and pricing. And that's super cool in my mind, because it used to be like set and forget type of thing. So
Right.
it was not so strategically important as such. And one specific question is that I saw an article that Salesforce is planning to change the name to Agentforce.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it could be a massive in that sense.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love that. That honestly kind of reminds me of when Facebook changed their name to Meta. But I think there's probably like the metaverse seemed to kind of come and go for a little bit there. I think some people are still working on the metaverse, mainly in like the gaming space and VR space. But I could I could kind of see Agentforce sticking for a while, especially where it seems AI is going. So that and Benioff has been very bold, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Okay, Rob, that was regarding the 26, and I understand it's very risky to predict anything because it's such a fast evolving and changing environment, the whole monetization and pricing in SaaS. But you guys are you are seeing that, and I was super happy to hear about your new product, because that will bring a lot of value for all of us, to be honest. Hey, let's end by doing a little bit like a shotgun type of questions, rapid fire. And I'm hoping that you can only answer with one word or one sentence.
Awesome.
Let's try. I need to read it, so that might be not so rapid fire, but let's go. So the first one is the biggest SaaS pricing trend in 25. One word.
Credits.
Okay. And what is the biggest SaaS pricing trend in 26?
Credits. It's a important one. I think credits took over 25, and they're gonna keep taking over in 26.
All right, good. Then what is the most overrated SaaS pricing tactic right now?
I want to say this in one sentence, but I feel like it needs a little explanation. Outcome-based pricing. I think right now the hype for outcome-based pricing outweighs the substance, which makes it overrated, in my opinion.
Good, I agree. Most underrated SaaS pricing tactic right now?
I think add-ons remain underrated. I think add-ons are, like we talked about, kind of like a safe space for experimentation, and more companies should try add-ons.
Okay. What about flat fee or seat-based, or both flat fee and seat-based pricing in 26? Is it dead, declining, or evolving to something else?
Evolving to something else. I think Figma is one example. Chili Piper is another. There are companies that have done some really cool things with seat-based models, and I think it's going to be a long time before seats are totally gone.
Okay. Will more SaaS companies charge separately for AI next year? Yes or no?
Yes.
Separately. Yes. Okay. This one is interesting. The biggest pricing mistake SaaS companies still make, in your opinion?
still think it's moving. It's changing prices too infrequently. I think companies that kind of look at pricing as this thing that's separate from their product that they only need to look at every 2 or 3 years it's going to become a huge bottleneck in the new era of AI and how fast products are evolving and need to move.
Okay. If a pricing team in any SaaS company could fix one thing tomorrow, what should it be?
I would say this isn't the snap of the fingers, but like having the right infrastructure, the right tech stack to have an iterative pricing strategy, I think solves a lot of problems. It solves how many people you need to work on it. It gives you a lot more flexibility on what you can actually do when you launch a new product. So I think I would probably say that. I would say move toward like optimize your tech stack for iterative and nimble pricing.
Okay. Now comes the tricky one. Hardest department to align with pricing, the new type of pricing, product, sales, or finance?
So this one's interesting. I don't think product is the hardest. I think product is usually pretty reasonable when it comes to aligning pricing. I think finance can be challenging. Obviously, they have kind of like margins that they want to hit, numbers that they want to hit. I think sales is typically the hardest. And the reason I come from a sales background, so this is no shade at sales. Like I think like the best pricing managers and pricing people I know have a direct line into sales and are talking to sales teams constantly to understand how things are resonating. But the thing about sales is a lot of reps kind of get stuck in their ways on how they sell things, and they get tied to a certain story. And if your pricing is moving quickly, it kind of changes the story a lot of the time and just requires a lot of kind of like retraining and breaking old habits, which I think can be really hard for salespeople when there's kind of like all of this other stuff that they need to worry about. Where like keeping their story consistent, I think can be really, really helpful. And there's a little bit of resistance to change. So I would say sales.
Okay. Interesting. Two more. Usage-based pricing in its broadest context. In one sentence, is it a promise or problem?
Promise, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last one, you need to make this one big bold prediction for SaaS pricing in 26. Big bold prediction.
All right, I'll be bold. I think so I mentioned earlier that I could see a company going all in on outcomes. I'm just gonna say who knows if this happens, but I think Salesforce will go all in on outcome-based pricing or agentic pricing and get rid of seats and just not even worry about cannibalizing their model. I think they're just going to go all in on it.
All right, that's a big bold statement. Or predictions.
We'll see.
They have all the possibilities to do that. I mean, that's big enough. And I have to say that when I was thinking, I joined Digital Root, which is I joined in January, and I was thinking about the future of this kind of a business because we are at the core of the usage-based monetization, and one of the how would I say defining factors were the statement from Salesforce, and they say that we're gonna move from seat-based to usage-based. And I read that news and I said, okay, I'm going to join the company because there's a future. And that's, And we are all super, super excited about the future. I mean, this company has been, like I said, and it's so funny that 25 years with the pioneers like telco, media companies, utilities that has been usage-based from day one. It's so funny how this is now coming to the enterprises. Already 15, 20, 25 years ago, there was a talk about bill shocks. And now enterprises, SaaS companies are talking about, what about the bill shocks for our consumers? And credit-based is the prepaid model in telco language. So we are seeing these coming now in a similar manner to the enterprise space, which is, of course, which telling the story that it's kind of a It's repeating. History is repeating.
Yeah.
It's
You got,
itself now.
yeah, you guys are in a great position. Have seen the story play out quite a bit. And I love that experience. And I think it builds a lot of trust. And to your point about Salesforce, I think Mark Benioff going in that direction and going that far into usage-based pricing, like I think an underrated part of that is it gives a lot of other companies who might have a seat-based model
Yeah.
the agency to do the same thing. It's like, well, if an old school player like Salesforce is going to do it, then why aren't we doing it, right?
Exactly.
So it kind of breaks a lot of that inertia and kind of friction to do those sorts of things and experiment at other companies. And so I love that he's doing it because I think it's going to help push the entire industry forward.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. It was pleasure and great honor to have you and share your thoughts on SaaS pricing. And like I said, your community is doing great. It's such an active community, and keep pushing, building that. And definitely your work is not over. It's just accelerating. And there's one bonus question.
Yeah.
Tell me, how should I pronounce your last name?
That's it. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's Litterst.
I thought something like that.
Yeah, I think you got it. Yeah,
for the non-native speaker like me, it's a bit of a like, okay, how do I put my tongue now in the right?
It's a tough one. Yeah. I've heard Litterst. I've heard Litterist. There's a bunch of different possibilities there. It's fun fact. It's an Alsatian name, so French, German border. That's where my dad's family comes from.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been great to be here. Thank you for having me. And we are proud to partner with you guys and love what y'all are building at Digital Route. So excited to keep it going in 2026.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Ari.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.